Hi, everybody. So, my last installation of the Sergeant at Arms was about healthcare. And guess what this installation of the Sergeant at Arms is about? Healthcare. So, the first time we talked about it, it was from the perspective of repeal and replace Obamacare. And the Republicans were working on their bill, the American Health Care Act, to repeal and replace Obamacare. Now, we're in a position where they've decided they're not going to vote on it at all. They're not going to vote on the American Health Care Act because it just didn't have any support. Um, the word is that a third of the Republican base in the House was against it. Um, and with good reason, because it didn't have the details that it needed to have to make things better for people than the American Health Care Act. Um, and it's interesting because Senator Mark Warner was on Meet the Press today. And what he said kind of made sense, which was nobody's talking about the real details. And so there's a whole bunch of details in the American Health Care Act that nobody was on board with. The AARP came out against it, the American Medical Association. So nobody in the healthcare industry wasn't supportive of it as well. And when he said that, I thought, you know what, that makes sense because there hasn't been a lot of talk about the real details of this. They said 24 million people will lose coverage with the American Health Care Act. Okay, that's a pretty big detail. But, I'm sure there are details further in that bill that clearly made it much worse for everybody else. Um, and those are the things that should be a sign that it's not going well and that this might not be the right bill. The other thing that was pointed out was when Obamacare was created, um, it took 13 months to actually write, revise, and get it to the point where the Democrats wanted to take it to the House for a vote. The Republicans did this over 60 days. And 60 days is just not enough time. And there were Republicans who actually said, we don't need to rush this. We don't want to rush this. We want to get this right. And not enough people are getting served, or not enough people will get served if we rush this and try to do this in 60 days. That's just not enough. And so that made sense. You have to stop and say, is this about me or is this about the people who need to be covered? And truthfully, this is about the people who need to be covered, which is why the whole debate about, we nobody wants their name on it. Um, it makes sense to me because Trump Care or the American Health Care Act or Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, neither one of them should have a name on it. It should be the Affordable Care Act or the American Health Care Act. That's all we should be talking about. And that also brought up another thing, which is a couple of weeks ago, President Trump was doing a press conference and he slipped up and used the word company instead of the word country when he was saying how the economy was doing. And so he said, it's a strong company, and then he said a strong country. And so at that moment, I thought to myself, this is another sign that Donald Trump is a quintessential businessman. And let's not take that away from him. He's been a businessman for 50 years. That just doesn't go away overnight. He's only been in office for 60 days, and 60 days is certainly not enough time to reprogram yourself from 50 years of I'm running a company as a private citizen. Um, but it made me think. But at the same time, that's another indication that president is not the right role for him because he really is a fish out of water unless he can brand the Trump name on whatever he's doing. And knowing that that's not what the Republicans or him wanted for the American Health Care Act, that makes sense. The other thing I noticed was so Jean Pirro, who is a legal analyst on Fox News, she said something that was curious as well, which was no one, and she said no one, should expect a businessman to understand all the intricacies of creating policy and the inner workings of Washington, D.C. Again, how she could say that and not think she's completely going to lose credibility makes no sense to me, because he is the president of the United States. And the whole point of the president of the United States is that he is the chief politician of the United States of America. We go back to the point that I've been making over and over again, which is we need politicians doing this. Politicians are the people who should be doing this. The other thing that they've been talking about is, oh, this is so difficult. Really? We know this is difficult. The idea that President Trump has come into office and he really believed he was going to be able to do things differently than all the other previous presidents, 1 through 44, which doesn't make any sense either. I mean, every person goes into office as the president of the United States thinking, I'm going to change things, and nothing changes because Washington is Washington. We've got now the Republicans who are in charge of Washington, basically. I mean, they've got a majority in the House, in the Senate, and they've got the executive office. And yet they're still saying, we didn't know that being the majority was going to be so difficult. You can't have both ways. And yes, it is difficult. But yes, that's why we need people who are politicians doing this. That's why we need people who are experts in politics and they know how to use the legislative process. They know how to read the Constitution and interpret it. They know how to apply all of those things to the laws and policies that we need to run our country properly, whether you're a Republican and you think there should be smaller government, or whether you're a Democrat and you think the government should be there to help every citizen of the United States of America. One way or another, that has to be the case. But Donald Trump, again, we've elected him president. He is the president. And so we just have to see how this goes. The other thing that is also curious is he's been attempting to blame everyone else. And so that's where I think him and Gene Pirro are on the same page, because he doesn't want to say, this is my fault. He's the president of the United States. He claimed that he was such a good negotiator. This is proof that negotiating a business deal is completely different than negotiating policy when you have two opposing parties and they're attempting to come to one agreement. Most of the time, you're in a situation where it might work, it might not, but this is the time to say, I'm not sure that's gonna make the right case, but let's see if we can try to do that. And he's been doing that. He's been attempting to figure out how to do politics. And he's not doing a very good job of it. But he, wants to blame other people instead of saying, we're the ones who kind of gotten ourselves into this, and backtracks out of whatever he needs to backtrack out of in the convenience of saving face. It's going to be a tough road if you feel like you need to save face for every time you don't make the right choice. And you're not going to make the right choice all the time, because he basically is an apprentice president. I heard that term as well. We've got an apprentice president. We do have an apprentice president. He's a smart man. He's done well in business, but now we're talking about the government and politics. So let's see what happens. That's kind of where we are again. So I will close this installation of the Sergeant at Arms with, again, I'm tweeting with President Trump. I'm tweeting with Speaker Ryan. I'm tweeting with the Democrats and the Republicans. You should be too. Shoot me some tweets. Shoot me some comments below on this video log. And who knows, maybe we'll come up with some better answers than they've come up with, because again, it would be easier to just take the Affordable Care Act and fix it. That's what they really should do. They should just take the Affordable Care Act and fix it. And now they're saying we're done with trying to figure out how to repeal and replace. Good. Get rid of repeal and replace. Now let's get to, okay, we've got the Affordable Care Act. We're not going to use the term Obamacare anymore. Let's just fix the Affordable Care Act, because it needs a little bit of fixing. It is not imploding. The Office of Management and Budget has said it is not imploding. It just needs to be fixed. The Republicans insist that it's imploding. They insist that when it implodes, we'll get back to this. But for the moment, they're saying we're not going to do anything else. Good. If it because when it doesn't implode and things keep going on, eventually they'll get back to it. And maybe at that point they'll say, you know what, let's just fix it. So with that, I will close this installation of the Sergeant at Arms, and I will see you next time.